The blue day.
Yeah. It was accidental. Coincidental.
Hi guys, thanks for joining. This is Essence of Medicine. I'm Amanda Armagast.
I'm Melissa Haber.
And I'm Dr. Abbasi, and it is both Essence of Medicine and Essence of History. Now, what are we going to talk about, Amanda?
Well, today we're going to be remembering your childhood hero. Do you want to say who it is?
I like to first say why he's my childhood hero. I'm born about 10 years before the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And before the revolution, we got everything you got here at that time. Like I used to see, Sesame Street and Aquaman and Batman and so on. And we were like glued to the TV when we were doing that. After the Islamic Revolution, lots of this American TV and so on went away. And we didn't really saw same shows and so on. And we were limited to the shows that are from the East Bloc, like a Eastern Bloc, like those countries like Poland and so on and so forth. So the TV in Iran was very limited, but that little TV that was out there, it was very interesting. So meaning that even that bad revolution, bad situation for the people, war and so on, it had something. We watched lots of documentaries and lots of stories, lots of practically life stories of lots of people that you guys don't grow up here. Do you know who some of them are? Like
Nope.
Marie Curie.
You don't know them, do you know?
Marie Curie, like Ramon Cajal, like Mendeleev, like Dostoevsky, and including in that things that we used to watch, and that was all what's in the TV, was Ignaz Semmelweis. And I don't know, I mean, I remember still those TVs because as a child, you're like a sponge, you remember things, you absorb things. And there are few people I was really absorbed in their life stories. And Semmelweis was one of them. I couldn't pinpoint as a child why I was so fascinated by his story. And but now, almost 45 years later, I know why I was fascinated with his story. Ignaz Semmelweis. The title of our podcast today is Remember Ignaz Semmelweis. So before we even go to his life, Ignaz Semmelweis, we have to talk about theories in medicine. Like everybody has heard of Hippocratic oath, you know? What is a Hippocratic oath?
It's the oath that all doctors have to take.
Not really. That we don't really take that
Oh.
oath. It is integrated in the laws and rules and regulation. But
The
it
oath
is a
said, is it not?
huh?
Don't you have to say the oath?
No, I never said the oath. We don't take oath anymore. We
I had
go
to take
through-
an oath before I
Really?
graduated. But
Wow.
there's a physician assistant oath that
No
we had to
kidding.
read at our graduation.
Well, we have to sign a lot of documents, but
That's probably on there.
yeah, well, not really. We are much farther. No, Hippocratic oath. Do you know how old that is?
Old,
Like what? How?
like 1600s, 1200, 500 BC.
No, it is about 2,300 years old.
So,
It's old. 2,300 years old.
so
We have better
300
things.
BC-ish.
Yeah, about.
That wasn't too far off.
No, you weren't. But we have better things than things that are 2,300 years old to perform what we are doing.
Right. I
We don't
understand.
rely on things that are too. As a matter of fact, one of our advantages and one of the impediment in medicine and in science has been that old Greek philosopher, they put ideas in place, concept in place. And first in Renaissance, after we shut them off, that is when we could grow. Like there were this idea of elements, that there were four elements: wind, fire,
water.
air, and water. For a long time, that was the concept of existence. And we had to go through tremendous amount of discovery, pain, and suffering until we shed it off. Do you know what that four element come from? From Aristotle. Aristotle was a big figure, but the problem was that in 16th and 17th century, we were still working on Aristotelian concept of existence. Same thing with medicine. We were still working on Hippocrates' idea of bodily humors. You know what they are? The bodily humor?
Give me the first one.
Blood,
Oh, okay, no.
black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. We thought everything in our body works based on those four humors.
Okay.
Okay, that humoralism was the concept of medicine. You would be surprised
I'm already
until
surprised.
Louis Pasteur, meaning toward the end of the 17th century, toward the end of 17th century, we thought the malaise. Have you heard the word malaise, right? Do you know what that means? Bad air.
Yeah.
It means bad air. We thought these humors in our body, that are imbalance of this humor in your body that makes you sick. Like black bile, you're more black bile than yellow bile or blood and so on. And that here comes when you understand that. You have to understand that you are to know why in 17th and 18th century, there are for so many diseases, they would let blood. Literally, they would cut you and let you take blood from you because they thought that in that humorism, the blood is too much compared to other. And that is why they let blood and
So they had the idea that our body has like homeostasis, that there's a balance. They just didn't grasp exactly how to balance that.
No,
Yeah.
what needs to be balanced?
and the actually scary part is that wasn't until 200 years ago or so that we shed that off.
Well, even didn't they do that with George Washington?
They did it with George Washington in 17 something something or 18 something something. I mean, until Louis Pasteur toward the second half of this second half of the 17th century is where we found out about the germ theory. Until then, we just thought it's a bad air. It's a disbalance between this balance between these humors that makes you sick. And Ignaz Semmelweis was born to that concept of medicine.
Okay.
So you did some research. Why don't you tell us, both of you tell us, what did you find out about Ignaz Semmelweis?
Oh, I found out that he was born in 1818.
Exactly 100 years before the end of this First World War. And that is important.
See?
Why
I
is it
learned
important?
something. Well, you're going to tell me.
Because he was born after the First World War, the Austro-Hungarian Empire fell apart. But 1818 was the top, highest point, or that era of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Okay.
They were the center of civilized universe. The best philosopher, the best poets, the best composer, the best medical knowledge was in their place. And you know what their the capital was?
Of Hungary?
Austro-Hungarian Empire, Vienna.
Oh.
Okay. So Semmelweis was not born in Vienna, but everybody who wanted to be something or somebody did go to Vienna. Semmelweis was born you guys know where he was born?
No, well, no, I just know he was born in Hungary.
In Hungary, in Budapest.
Budapest.
I hope one day I can take you both to Budapest. It is the most romantic, beautiful city. It is on a river Danube, which is by itself is an unbelievable place. But on one side was the Buda, on the other side the Pest, and then they came together. Hence, the city of Budapest. It is that has the most beautiful architecture, and it was city of romantic after Heidelberg. Heidelberg used to be a city of romantic in Europe, where I did go to med school, and then after that, the Prague and Budapest fighting which one is going to be the overhand, and both of them are very beautiful cities. He was born there, but the name Semmelweis is a very German name.
I would
Semmel?
agree.
Weiss means white, and Semmel is actually, there are many different versions of it, but it can be like the kind of bread is called Semmel.
Okay.
Okay, so we call it Semmel. At least in southern Germany, we call it Semmel. And so he was born there to more or less a middle class aristocratic family, and as they do, they educate their children in certain field, and those fields are like law or medicine. So yeah, I'm not surprised that he started first with law before he went to medicine.
Yeah.
He went to law, said, nope, not for me, went to medicine. So what else did you find out about him? I don't want to have a monologue here. Tell me about what you all know about his life, and did you find anything else interesting from his childhood?
I didn't really do much research personally on his childhood. I think Charlie might have. Most of what I was learning about was more in the future, which we'll get to
What he's
more about.
known for.
Yeah, and what he's known for, and kind of like the mark that he made, and why
He was a rebel.
wasn't. Yeah,
He was a rebel, true and true. And he was a troublemaker.
It's all making sense now.
no wonder he likes him.
Of course.
And what you need to know, again, it's important about where he was. He was in the center of the academic universe in the Austro-Hungarian, in the capital of Austro-Hungarian Empire. The place that was the place to be. Was the place to learn. Was the place to be progressive, because compared to that, everything was backward, and practically compared to that place, everybody else was provincial. So he goes through the med school and everything.
Well, did you want to say anything interesting about his childhood?
I think I did, that he was a rebel. That he wasn't, he was from early on in his school, he wasn't like many other, high intellectual people. He was not the part of the crew. He wasn't like part of the clique. He's the oddball throughout.
Seems to
And
be
that's
kind
not
of
unusual.
a theme when it comes to
Einstein too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those that make a mark on the world tend
So
to have.
I like what you just said. Those who make a mark on the world, they're oddballs. Yeah, I'm not surprised about that at all.
No, it makes sense.
So now he goes to med school. And at that time, those theories of humoralism is still in place. We understand nothing about the human body. We barely understand what the pulse is and how it works, or and so on. Vital sign, nothing about that. Germ theory, what's that? And he wanted to become what a good doctor always wanted to be, an internal medicine. That is what he wanted to be. But he's too odd for that. So he get pushed to something less prominent, and that is OBGYN or
Oh.
gynecology. Okay.
Which I thought,
Nice.
I don't know, when I was doing my research, I thought that I read that there weren't that many doctors in OBGYN. It was mostly like midwives and nurses, and he was.
That is, good doctors wanted to be internal
Yeah, they
medicine.
wanted to.
Surgeons weren't high up at all,
Mm.
because every time they touched anybody, patient died. They were like barbers. Barbers were surgeons. Internal medicine is like balancing fluids in the body and so on. Those were the real doctors. Everybody else was,
So wasn't that even more odd that he was in an OBGYN, like a doctor,
he didn't have any other
'Cause
choice.
didn't they call them man nurses or something?
No, it were doctors.
No, I heard when I was doing my podcast that there were the female midwives, and then there were male
Mm.
versions of the midwives, but they were called
Mhm.
something else.
So
No,
they were
but-
probably made, like you said, they didn't have that high class respect that
Yeah.
other doctors would. So they probably did get those,
No, but that-
male nurse,
Yeah.
no, but there were as well doctors, but that's important because there were midwives,
Mhm.
mostly nuns.
Oh, sure.
And as a matter of fact, in German, the word for nurse is sister, nurse, Schwester.
Hmm.
That
That
because
makes
they were
sense to me.
Catholic nuns usually, or nuns. But there were midwives, and that's important. I'm going to come back to that. And then there were doctors who they just didn't get them internal medicine
Is it
spot.
fair to say at this point, all doctors were males?
Yeah, it is very fair to say all doctors were males.
Right.
There were no female doctor at that time.
Right.
In many countries, you couldn't even go to university if you're a woman.
Or read or write, I'm thinking.
Well,
about
no,
1800s.
they could read and write, but you couldn't have an academic
Sure.
position as a wife, as a woman. So he get pushed to this lower position doctor, and he's in a community hospital. And like all the community hospitals, they have these wards that doctors run, and you have to pay. And they have this ward that is the charity, church runs it, midwives run it,
Hmm.
and then they take care of the poor people and so on. Is anything odd about that so far?
Well,
No?
it seems a little bit imbalanced.
Yeah,
but
it is
if you can
imbalanced.
If we're
afford
thinking
it-
of the time
Yeah.
and place, I mean, none of this is surprising to me at all.
Yeah,
I also went to school at a Catholic nun-based school, so I understand the midwife nursing of the 1800s, surprisingly. So
let's put you back in 1800. You're about to give birth to heart delivery, because not even everybody went to hospital for this. You going there to the hospital. Which hospital would you go?
I would go to the
Closest.
money-based one with doctors.
And who you?
Of course. I
Of
would be-
course.
Yeah.
To that where
But-
you have to pay for the doctors and not midwives are in charge,
Yeah,
right?
I think isn't the midwife though even a step up from what was the standard, which was having birth in your home?
Yeah,
Yes,
that
yeah,
is
I agree.
that is, I think, they had different level of midwives and so on, but yeah, they had home birth, hospital midwife, hospital highest level,
Mhm.
doctors. But here becomes interesting. The reputation was already established. People would beg to go to midwife place and not to the doctor's hospital. Do you know why? From every three woman who was admitted to the hospital, one of them died.
They died, infections.
Mhm.
From imagine 30% mortality. Every third woman at the same time in the midwife section,
Mhm.
only about 2 to 5% would die. But in the doctor's place, 30% would die. And even with the best effort, that number was around 16 to 20% would die. So that was already established.
Mhm.
Woman would go there and beg to be admitted. The patient knew that, would beg to be admitted to the midwife section. That is when the woman who can afford everything, the hospital want to put them there so they pay, and they have the money, that's not a issue, and they beg to be admitted to the cheap section. What does that tell us?
The cheap section's doing something right.
Mhm.
And the expensive section is doing something wrong,
Mhm.
and people know it.
Mhm.
The reputation is already established. There is nothing unknown about that. So if women know that, the doctor would have known that. Do you think it really bothered any of those doctors or chair of the department and so on? Do you think it bothered them?
Doesn't sound
Nope.
like it.
Doesn't really sound like it.
Because they were probably still having business regardless.
Well, they gotta make
Babies were
money.
still being had. So
So Semmelweis, it did bother Semmelweis. And that is where my fascination with him come. He just doesn't accept that. He doesn't accept that every third woman should die
Mhm.
during the birth process. And they didn't die right away.
They went
They
home.
delivered the baby and so on. And then they start having what we would call today infection,
Mhm.
and then they would die. And those doctors treated them with humoral kind of thing. They let blood.
They were already bleeding, bleeding from birth.
They let blood.
So,
Almost nobody who got to that point made it.
And that was so
Do
when
you
they
s-
thought that the air was dirty and stuff.
They
like
thought it's the
that.
air,
Yeah.
and and that they thought it's the humoral imbalance and malaise, air, and so on and so forth. And that was the status. Semmelweis come and say, what is the difference? Why so many better? Is it because we are crowded here? No, the midwife section was crowded more.
Mhm.
Do they have less resources? They have thing and so on. And what is really the difference? They are not even far away. It's not, for God's sake, it's not the air. They are in the same building. It's not the air.
Not
So
the
what-
cleaning people.
Well, if it was any cleaning, but what is it? What is it? Midwives versus doctors. And what is that? And another thing that he discovered is that all those women who died, they went for dissection in the morning, because in the morning they would do dissection with the student, and in the afternoon they would come and examine the patient. And I mean, if you think about the humoral kind of concept, it makes sense. They didn't bother really wash their hands.
No.
That is, it's so, we cannot wrap our head around that today. But that they were gentlemen. What, you're telling a gentleman's hand can transfer, be dirty and transfer disease and so on? Are you insulting me?
Mhm.
Are you telling me that my hand, I'm a gentleman, transfers something that makes this woman sick? You are a crazy person, Semmelweis.
Right. Especially, we all know you can't see it.
Right.
So try convincing somebody that has to imagine these. If I were trying to explain to a child right now, like, oh, you got little germs on your hands that can make you sick, it seems almost crazy to even
Yeah.
talk out
Well,
loud,
Well,
let
we do
alone,
teach children now, so adults can.
right.
Although I think like 1 in 5 people still don't wash their hands after using the restroom. It's a
We've had this
really,
conversation, and I believe that's because we need to teach men that just because they go pee, they still need to wash their
that's
hands.
a huge thing, actually.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, but I'm talking about going from cadaver to
To-
examining a patient
Well, and we're talking about having all the information in front of you.
and still ignoring
making a
it,
conscious
Still doing
decision
it.
to not.
still
So
ignoring it.
These people, ignorance is bliss. These people are the ones we're referring to are
Are-
choosing ignorance.
Right.
Those
Yeah.
doctors, they didn't know yet.
Okay, but the evidence
point.
were out there though. The evidence were for everybody to see. Women knew that. They would beg, literally beg not to go to that hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mhm.
So patient knew that. Everybody knew that. But the establishment, the medical establishment, it wasn't there. They were lacking any evidence. They knew how much patients are dying in their ward versus the midwife section, and yet they all ignored that. And when Semmelweis start advocating, to wash your hand after that cadaver dissection before you go there,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think what the reaction of the medical establishment was?
Not good.
Yeah, probably not.
He was ridiculed. He was
Yeah.
laughed
yeah,
off.
Get fired.
No, he
Get him
did
out
get,
of here.
Oh,
he
he-
actually did get
banned.
fired eventually.
What's
He-
that?
So
It's a pattern. Anytime you try and go against the establishment, they kind of get upset in history.
yeah, and so
In
he
reality.
was sent back from Vienna
Hmm.
to back office or back place, which was the Budapest compared to Vienna. So his boss is actually major phrase from his boss telling Semmelweis, literally telling Semmelweis, stick to what is known and what's tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your place to move the establishment, I'm paraphrasing, or bring up new ideas is not your place.
Mhm.
That while women were dying in his word, nature is, universe is, karma is to a point real. One of his biggest opponent cut himself during the dissection with a scalpel, and he died of puerperal fever, which is infection.
Cross-contamination too. I
Yes.
mean.
And
I
yeah,
know.
and so that is the sad story. But about few years after Semmelweis' death, the pasteur introduced the theory of germs, that there are things you don't see that can transfer the disease from those people who literally you killed with your not washing your hand. You get the bacteria from them and you then bring it back, and then the cycle goes on and on.
Mhm.
Even after he did it everywhere, Semmelweis went and he enforced that project, washing your hand, the death rate dropped like to 1/10 of what it was. 1/10. Do you need any more evidence? That was not enough. Do you see, if you care anything about the people and you listen to Semmelweis' history, how you're captured, your heart is almost being squeezed, at the ignorance, that while people are dying and there's no lack of evidence, patients know that, they come and beg not to go there. And in every place he went, the rate of death dropped 1/10, lower than the maternity ward run by midwives and so on. And yet, people tell him, stick to what's out there and don't move forward. It's not your place to fight the establishment. And he paid the price. He was fired, he wasn't promoted, he was sent to backward, and even then he went on the street. He went on the street and asked the woman to ask their doctor to wash their hands. He did
his own public marketing campaign.
He did his own public marketing campaign. Any similarities with what we do?
I've been thinking about what we do this whole time.
Yeah. What is so what comes to your mind? I mean, when you think about Semmelweis' history.
Well, my first thought is because of course there's a lot of correlations for people that follow along with us and our stories and kind of what you're saying. From what I've heard, there are a lot of studies that Inspired Spine themselves have put out to show, infection rates, the BMI controls, all this different things that we've had, with Olaf specifically. And you go and you show it and we put it out there and everybody just says the same thing. Well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, that's fine. You do what you're doing, but I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I was in Seattle. I was in a conference and I showed them my data. And I showed them that my rate of infection is 0.2. And I showed that to people whose rate of infection is 5 to 10%. I showed that to them. And when I was there, Semmelweis in the back of my mind, because I saw the smirk on the corner of their mouths. I saw the ridicule in the corner. They wouldn't express that. We were on camera, but they would ask a question. They would, one of them, I went there, was talking to them. You notice that they get together, that separate themselves, and one of them hesitate for a fraction of a second to shake my hand. So, yeah.
That is so rude.
No, but listen, I don't take that personally.
No, you don't take that. I know you don't take that personally, but it's not really about how you're taking it.
Yeah.
Other people see that behavior as well.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really embarrassing. It's not embarrassing for you. It's embarrassing for them.
For medical community, but this is not new.
Of it,
but
to openly say, I would rather not put in the effort to learn these new things or take accountability. It's exactly what we were just saying. Well, why would I wash my hands? That's more work for me to do.
But do you see that thing there? Our risk of infection is 1/15 to 1/25 of open traditional spine surgery. Okay, it's 1/15 to 1/25. I put it out there, those people who have 10% risk of infection, 5% risk of infection, they have the smirk on the corner of their mouth, but that behavior is not new. That is why
Right.
Semmelweis, at 45 years later, I know why I have this fascination with his wife, with his life and so on. You know, his story is tragic though. Semmelweis' story is tragic. You can imagine what happened next.
Well,
He became a recluse or.
He
Well,
he went mad.
I say people probably wouldn't talk to him. He wasn't accepted
Yeah.
into
The medical
civilization.
community didn't,
Shunned him probably
they
for.
did. They did.
This is such a story. You can put almost any huge inventor, innovator, or something in this same shoes. Like Einstein was similar,
Anybody, yeah.
Tesla.
Like
Mhm.
anybody that questions the
Yeah.
norm, just in general, it doesn't have to be high inventions, laws are
Small,
changing
yeah.
very rapidly nowadays. And we see that a lot just with acceptance and, this is not what it was at one point, but this is what it is now. You need to, accept it, roll with it, go with it, or else you're just as good as they were back then.
So let me tell you a few things about this Semmelweis, and it's few hundred years later, and people has not changed. People are the same people. They stick to a concept, and if something comes and they rattles that concept, they move that concept too much, it is vast majority of the people don't want to even look at that. So people has not changed. People have not changed, but nobody remembers any of those people who gave Semmelweis a hard time. Nobody remembers them.
There you go.
Everybody remembers Semmelweis. But do you know how many people had to die until that was accepted? How many people had
I
to
don't even
die?
want to try and do that math.
That is
because
sad.
You know how
One in
many,
three?
how many people are giving birth they say every 3 minutes or something like that, or
Well,
3 seconds, I don't know, crazy amounts. And
how
then you
many-
put that
It's
fraction
like
in
one
there,
every 10 minutes then dying.
How many children grew
A
up without a
lot.
mother
a lot.
because of that ignorance, that carelessness of being academic, but closing your eyes, that cannot be forgiven. That just cannot be forgiven. The callousness about the human suffering, that all the evidences are in front of you, but you are too good to look at them and take consequences, take hard consequences, and that if you have a question, go try it out. You're academic for that reason. Semmelweis was driven mad. He was ostracized. Everybody literally ridiculed him and laughed him off. And he was admitted to mental asylum.
Is
and-
that where he died?
When he was 47, 48, he had the altercation with one of the wardens, one of the guards in the mental asylum. He cut himself and he got an infection from that and he died of sepsis at the age of 47.
Now I'm just trying to think of, you explained medicine and how they treated them before. Now I'm thinking how they treated the
psych
patients and the
patients.
psych patients. I already know some of the things that they would do, but I'm just thinking back to the cutting or the bleeding, you're a little crazy today. Here, let's drain some blood. We know what happens when you start to become depleted in those things that clearly it's just going to make everything a lot
Yeah.
worse. So it just gets my mind thinking, and I don't like to think about it.
No, the tragedy of Semmelweis' life is a human tragedy, but as well a triumph of
Right.
of the humanity. And I can go on, and I can talk about lots of other people who have truly made a mark in human history, in human life, in medicine, that they had similar experience. And I truly feel some of that responsibility now. And what a burden to know that you are experiencing what Semmelweis or Ramon Kokal or Marie Curie experienced hundreds and hundred years ago. What a burden to still stand up every morning and go back to do what you do best, to say, I'm still here. You know what Raman Kohal or Semmelweis did not have? They did not have Amanda and Alyssa to go directly to, they did not have social media. They did not have a podcast to talk about it. Literally, Semmelweis went on the street, talked to a woman on the street. Now, imagine I would go to the downtown and I start talking to a woman about, ask your doctor, wash their hand.
That all the time, actually.
Yeah.
I see stuff like don't you see campaigns like that on TikTok? Like people
I see
going
there's
to
signs,
like,
there's signs
you
in the
remember?
bathrooms that say, make sure the employees wash their hands. And
I
I think
know.
those are so
I
embarrassing.
know every
But
time I see those, I'm like,
if it
maybe
works,
not just
whatever.
employees, everyone.
Do you remember when we went to front of a club and I was making a video about,
That is such a
Don't-
different story.
well, I was saying,
Judging
don't-
people for their outfits
no,
is such a
I
different.
was saying, put something on so you don't have
Yeah,
hypothermia,
he's worried about them being cold.
okay? And it was in
Okay.
January, people walking almost naked from the clubs and so on. And actually you encouraged me to do that. And I got lots of, they were telling that I'm
No, I
catcalling and so on. Yes, you
You
did.
guys, I
Yeah.
would not even.
So either way, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go on the street.
I
We
would.
have better tools today than 200 years ago about educating our patient, and that's what's about.
Mhm.
Sure.
Okay, remember Semmelweis. It's a tragedy and a triumph at the same time, and I think what we need to know is that that experience wasn't the first one,
Mhm.
It's
and
not the last.
it's not the last, and it's ongoing. In 2023, we have the same experiences that the people are laughing off through innovation and through changes, and there is still that callousness regarding human suffering.
We should do a podcast sometime of like a speed round of different people that were basically like laughed off and then later their ideas were accepted.
So that would be a good round. That could be an interesting round.
Me, I was thinking more, try to pronounce their names on live.
I know, I'm like, do you want to say who your childhood
Yeah,
hero was?
Who is this guy we're talking about today?
Let me tell you about something that you probably have heard from me, at least ad nauseum, multiple times. Do you know why we are able to use this technology to do what we are doing? Because we understand how electrons behave in certain situation, how electronic works, computers, microphone, internet, all of that. All of that is based on the quantum theory. The father of the quantum theory, Max Planck, said a new idea doesn't ever get accepted because academics jump on it and recognize the true value of it. It comes through one inspired person who not giving up and moving it forward. And I'm not paraphrasing now. And the old forts die and the new generation accept the new ideas. And his major phrase was, the science improves one funeral at a time. When the old cadre dies and you think, and the word inspire in that phrase, use that word, that's where inspired spine comes from. So, but again, I feel how they felt in their lifetime, because I feel that
You're
pressure.
going through it now.
I'm going through that pressure now.
And you've been
I
going
see.
through that
I-
pressure for years, but at
10
different
years.
and
Different levels, for
reasons,
sure.
different levels, different people, different
Yeah.
naysayers, and different supporers.
Do we think it's gonna slow down?
No,
I doubt it. I doubt it. But it just that is why we are doing it, because it does make a difference in patients' life
Absolutely.
every
for
day.
sure.
Every day.
We see it.
If you have been told you have to live with the pain and you say, I don't want to live with this pain, I want to die. You come to us and we do a 1 hour surgery,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then you go and regain your life.
And every one patient whose life got regained, it's like actually 3 or 4 people's lives got regained because that patient's family can
Oh,
relax and be
absolutely.
so much easier. That's what I was thinking about all these moms that are passing away. It's not just the child now
Living
that
without the
doesn't have,
mother.
yeah, now it's the
right.
husband without a wife. It's so many people are,
lost their
yeah,
daughter,
right.
grandparents trying to take care. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point that you say, Dr. Bossi will probably point on this. Our patients typically, they don't come alone because they kind
They
of
need it.
can't
Mhm.
anymore. Most of the time, they're to the point where they kind of rely on somebody else to take care of them to some extent, not always that, but
Mhm.
so when you say regaining their lives back, you're right. It's kind of a weight lifted off of their family's
Yeah.
shoulders as well. So
Now, do we, for what we do we lack evidence? Do we have
absolutely
any lack
not.
of evidence of what we are doing?
Absolutely not, no way.
So we have over 1,200 patient testimonial at different stage. We have the result of those infection rates that we have versus open surgery and so on. We have all of that.
Mhm.
And yet the smirk on the corner of
I still think
This-
about that Colorado conference when that doctor was trying, I'm not gonna say his name. He was challenging you so much on the stage, but he had to give you a check because you did a presentation. And
Oh.
so he, after all this challenging and fighting on the stage, he comes up and like throws the check at him.
Take your money.
Yeah, like,
because they
Fine.
invited me to go there and so on. So, but the idea here is the same. That the true changes are not easily accepted. One of the questions to me is that why aren't there everybody's doing that? Why is not, if this is so good, if it's so much better, why isn't everybody else is doing that? And my nice answer to that is that those doctors are busy to go there and go educate, learn, train, go more back to school and learn that and so on.
yeah, that's definitely a
this
nice
is
way of putting it.
Yeah, but that's unconscionable to know that being faced with the evidence and refuse to look at it. That's unconscionable.
Especially if you're refusing to look at it because of benefits that you're getting for doing
Yeah.
something else.
Now and again, it all comes back to history of Semmelweis. Remember
I do have
Semmelweis?
one point that you said, because my family asks a lot of questions when I go home about what we do.
Same.
And I tell them, oh yeah, our surgeries are, shorter, this and that. And they had said, well, don't you get paid more if you're in the operating room longer? Don't you get paid more for longer surgeries? I just had to laugh because I've never been one for the money. I always tell people, keep me out of that. So it's not surprising that everyone's first thought is, well, what about the money? Don't you lose money when you create shorter surgeries? Don't you lose money when you do this? And it's just, that's kind of the thought that a lot of
Yeah.
other people have too. It's
Well-
about the money. It's the business of medicine.
Yeah, and once you're saturated with that,
Mm-hmm.
you don't care about, you're good at the old ways.
Mm-hmm.
We should look up that phrase that Semmelweis boss told him. We should look it up. As a matter of fact, if you want to look it up as a closure to this podcast, we should read that.
Yeah.
And the sentence, look for what Semmelweis boss told him to stop.
How do you spell it?
Semmelweis, do you want to type it?
Semmmelw. There you go.
Quote, saying to him, yeah. So there's even a paper on PubMed about him.
Oh my gosh, that is a sad quote. What is his famous quote? Semmelweis' famous quote. When I look back on the past, I can only dispel the sadness which falls upon me by gazing into that happy future when the infection will be banished. It's pretty sad.
That is what he said. Now let's read about what his boss told to him, what to do and what not to do. Actually, that should be somewhere. If you want, I can quickly type it. So what did the chair of Vienna department
Also
told
known as boss.
Semmelweis? young Klein. Yeah, that was the. So it is probably not going to be that easy to find, but that was actually a very interesting thing. So he practically tell him, stop, don't care. Nobody cares. Okay.
One of those stop while you're ahead type of,
Stop, otherwise you will be in trouble.
so a
And he
threat.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
a threat. But he couldn't. Semmelweis,
I couldn't even
couldn't stop.
imagine
Can I look at
this,
the agony of sitting there knowing that you have the ability to save all these people and you just can't. Like that in itself would probably drive me crazy. Like just sitting there, like knowing, like something as simple as just throw your hands under some water with some soap, you know, and that would drive me absolutely insane to have to be quiet. Or that's probably the definition of gaslighting. I bet
Yeah.
he got gaslit right up.
that
Oh,
is
for sure. It's
Made like
where
he
it
was
started.
crazy.
okay. Well, we'll come back to that. We can add it to the
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 comments,
comment
yeah.
section
when we
of
figure
that.
it
And
out.
that was, but that quote should be in our podcast description as callousness of heart.
Mm.
But in the face of, not figuratively, but literally people dying at 10 times the rate.
Mm.
That if you just follow a simple advice, and that would be no harm to them to wash their hand. It is really, it is when you consider, it shouldn't be really a big deal. You just wash your hand. Even if you don't believe in that, it's not any additional thing. It's not really a big deal to wash your hand, even if there is a 2% chance that could be any truth in that,
Mhm.
because the alternative is a tragedy
Yeah.
that other people have to live with.
For
This
sure.
callousness of heart is unbearable. Well, we stay on a positive note. It's 2023, and we have social media.
Mhm.
People are smarter than ever. We have a technology that brings this knowledge to patient
Mhm.
for them to look it up and make decision for themselves. So we still have the same kind of mentality in many places, but I'm hoping that it doesn't take as long as it took Semmelweis understanding to get acceptance for other things.
Mhm.
Well, thank you guys for listening. This is Essence of History. My name is Amanda Armagast.
My name is Alyssa Haber.
And I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence.
Have a good